2020 is a big year for humanity's journey to Mars, with no less than 4 missions scheduled to leave for the Red Planet in the summer. If you're wondering why they're all scrambling to get up there this year, there's a reason for that. Once every 26 months, Mars gets close to Earth and creates conditions optimal for travel to the Martian surface, that is, using the least amount of energy and the shortest transit time. Due to their different orbital periods, the usual 365 days it takes the Earth to orbit the Sun is double that for Mars at 687. When the launch window opens from July to August, Mars will be in opposition, with Earth positioned in between it and the Sun. And that's when the missions from the US, China, the UAE, Europe, and Russia will be launching. As part of their Mars exploration program, NASA will launch its Mars 2020 rover from Cape Canaveral, Florida on July 17th. It's expected to touch down on February 18, 2021 on Mars' Jezero crater, where it will search for signs of ancient life. A study published in the journal Icarus had identified mineral deposits called carbonates along the crater's inner rim, and said a lake was at the site of the Martian crater more than 3.5 billion years ago. NASA says its Mars 2020 rover will collect rock core samples from the Martian surface, as carbonates on the crater could be preserving signs of past life. The mineral deposits could also reveal how the red planet evolved from having liquid water and a thicker atmosphere to a cold, dry desert. Another study had found hydrated silica minerals that are also capable of preserving ancient life on the edge of the Jezero crater. This could be an ideal location for the rover to search for buried microbial fossils, especially if the minerals are located at the crater's bottom layer. In preparation for the mission, the Mars 2020 rover took its first driving test at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California last December 17th. According to NASA, the rover was able to roll forward, backward, and perform a pirouette in the laboratory over a period of 10 hours. It was also able to drive over small ramps in the lab. The rover is equipped with an autonomous navigation system, which uses high-resolution navigation cameras and image processing software. Its wheels have been redesigned for added durability. NASA says the technology will allow the rover to drive roughly 200 meters per Martian day, while a radar imager gathers data about the planet's surface. NASA's engineers have also connected a small helicopter to the bottom of the Mars 2020 rover. According to NASA, a cover will shield the mini helicopter from debris as the rover lands on Mars' surface. The aircraft will be deployed over the red planet once the rover finds a suitable area to conduct test flights. The helicopter will be carrying a camera to capture photos of the Martian surface for transmission back to Earth. NASA's website explains that the main body of the Mars helicopter will be the size of a softball and weigh under 4 pounds. The helicopter will use 2 sets of rotor blades that are 4 feet long. These will spin at 2,400 rotations per minute to allow the helicopter to fly as high as 15 feet above the red planet. The Mars helicopter will include a solar array to recharge its batteries that are to be used to rotate the blades and keep the vehicle warm throughout the night. Like NASA, China is also aiming to launch its Mars rover in July, though a specific date has yet to be announced. China's Mars 2020 mission will be launched on a Long March 5 carrier rocket from the Wensang spacecraft launch site in Hainan province. A lander, along with an orbiter and a rover, will be deployed to the red planet. The mission is being called the Mars Global Remote Sensing Orbiter and Small Rover, or HX-1. The lander is designed to operate for 3 Martian months. The lander will touch down on the northern hemisphere of Mars, according to the State Council of the People's Republic of China's website. It will contain a rover that has 6 wheels and 4 solar panels, and will be able to explore Mars by itself. The rover will contain a remote sensing camera as well as a ground-penetrating radar and is expected to collect Martian soil and bring it back to Earth by 2030. The third country gunning to go to the red planet this year is the United Arab Emirates. Their Hope Mars mission, also known as Emirates Mars mission, is scheduled for a July 2020 launch. If it's successful, it will be the first mission to Mars by any Arab nation. According to Khaleej Times, the Hope will be a hexagonal structure with a mass of about 1,500 kilograms, 2.37 meters in width, and 2.9 meters in height. To charge its batteries, the spacecraft will use three 600-watt solar panels, which will unfold once the probe is in orbit. Communication with Earth will be done via a high-gain antenna. Hope will be launched from Japan using Mitsubishi's HIIA launcher. It will take approximately 200 days to travel to Mars at speeds of up to 40,000 kilometers per hour. The spacecraft will carry a digital camera, an infrared spectrometer, and an ultraviolet spectrometer that will gather climate and atmospheric data on Mars and send the images back to Earth. If everything goes according to plan, the probe will arrive on Mars in 2021 and is expected to study its atmosphere for about 2 years. The EU and Russia are collaborating on a mission to Mars to try and answer the question of whether life has ever existed on the red planet. According to the European Space Agency, the ExoMars program is comprised of 2 missions. The first, the Trace Gas Orbiter, launched in 2016 to orbit Mars and examine its atmosphere. The Shapurli lander had been deployed with the Trace Gas Orbiter to the surface, but crashed during a touchdown attempt. The second mission, slated for July 2020, will launch Roscosmos' Kasachok surface platform and the ESA's Rosalind Franklin rover to Mars via a Proton rocket. After a 9-month journey, a descent module will separate from the carrier and perform a controlled landing on the surface of the red planet, at a site called the Oxyaplanum. Space reports that the Oxyaplanum is a plain in the planet's northern hemisphere that is rich in clay deposits, indicating ancient water activity. After touchdown, the Kasachok platform will remain at the landing site to study the surface environment. Instruments on board will be used to take images of the landing point, study subsurface water distribution, as well as the planet's atmosphere and internal structure. The rover, meanwhile, will travel across the planet's surface using stereo cameras to build navigation maps and collision avoidance cameras to navigate the terrain. It will drill up to 2 meters down to retrieve underground samples that may contain preserved biomarkers, which will be subject to chemical, physical, and spectral analysis. New Atlas reports that the mission has had trouble in the past with parachutes, which tore in high-altitude tests. The team has since worked with NASA to iron out the issues, and have announced that the previous problems have been eliminated. But to be sure, further tests will be conducted ahead of the official launch later in the year. Orbiters and rovers are only the beginning. The goal is to sufficiently study the red planet, so that at some point in the not-too-far-off future, we can put humans on Mars. As far as crewed Mars missions, there are 2 entities at the forefront, NASA and SpaceX. First up is NASA, whose road to Mars is via the Moon. NASA's Moon to Mars exploration program, first proposed in 2015, consists of 3 phases. The first, called Earth Reliant, involves using the International Space Station until 2024 to research deep space technologies and study the effects of long-term space missions on the human body. It also covers NASA's development of the Orion spacecraft and the Space Launch System Super Heavy Lift Launch Vehicle, or SLS. NASA is currently in the process of testing the SLS rocket's fuel tank, which is a liquid hydrogen tank that is 61 meters tall and 8 meters in diameter. Its design allows it to hold over 2 million liters of supercooled liquid nitrogen. The tank will feed the rocket's RS-25 engines with cryogenic liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, producing almost 9 million pounds of maximum thrust. The launch vehicle is designed to carry NASA's Orion spacecraft as well as other cargo into deep space for exploration. Orion is one of NASA's next-generation exploration spacecraft, which is able to carry 4 crew members within its crew module. The second phase, Proving Grounds, involves the creation of infrastructure in cislunar space, such as the Lunar Orbiter Platform Gateway, to help the agency learn how to conduct operations in a deep space environment. The Gateway space station is slated for completion in the mid-2020s. According to Space.com, NASA's 2019 fiscal budget request calls for a 2022 launch of the Power and Propulsion Module. 2 additional launches by 2025 will add habitation, logistics, and airlock functions. According to the ESA, Gateway will serve as a staging post where astronauts can dock and leave their spacecraft, then travel to the lunar surface in a lander. It will also provide them shelter, a place to stock up on fuel and supplies and relay communications, and a base to dispatch crew and robots to the moon. Missions to Mars and its moons would begin during Earth Independent, the third and final phase, which could see NASA using the Lunar Gateway and a spacecraft such as the Deep Space Transport. According to Universe Today, a station in the Red Planet's orbit like Lockheed Martin's proposed Mars Base Camp could also be built to allow crewed missions to journey to the Martian surface. Based on a White House directive, NASA will be aiming to land astronauts on the moon by 2024, and then on Mars by the 2030s. It's hard to talk about humans going to Mars without mentioning SpaceX or Elon Musk. He's had several ambitious projects over the years, some of which have been called, like the Red Dragon, a modified Dragon 2 capsule that was meant to be sent to Mars in 2018. The Dragon's heat shield had been meant to withstand temperatures over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, making it possible to safely enter and plummet through the Martian atmosphere. The capsule would have also been equipped with 8 Super Draco engines, which would have allowed it to execute a propulsive landing on the red planet's surface. Back in 2018, Musk revealed a redesigned version of the Big Falcon rocket, the 2 major parts of which were later given descriptive names: Starship for the spaceship and Super Heavy for the boosters. The vehicle is meant to land like a skydive rather than an airplane, landing vertically after slowing its descent. In early 2019, he shared new images of a Starship prototype called the Starship Hopper, which has a shiny steel finish and a 9-meter tank diameter. The prototype was going to be used in suborbital vertical takeoff and landing tests, or suborbital hops. The orbital version of the Starship was supposed to be launched with a giant rocket called the Super Heavy rocket, with a capacity to carry up to 100 passengers. The Starhopper completed 2 hops in July and August 2019 before being retired to make way for the larger Starship prototypes. One of these larger prototypes is the 160-foot-tall Starship Mk1, which is equipped with 3 methane-fueled Raptor engines. When mounted atop the Super Heavy booster, the entire stack would have been 387 feet tall and contains 6 Raptor engines, with space for up to 37. It was meant to carry up to 100 people to destinations in space, like the Moon, Mars, or even around Earth. Instead of carbon fiber, the Starship spacecraft was going to be made of 301 stainless steel, which gets stronger as the temperature drops. The material's higher melting point is also meant to make the vehicle more resilient during re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. On November 20, 2019, the Starship Mk1 was partially destroyed during cryogenic pressure testing, prompting SpaceX to retire both the Mk1 and Mk2 prototypes. The company is currently building the Starship SN1 at its facilities in South Texas. Musk on January 16 tweeted a photo of technicians working on the liquid oxygen header tank and nose cone. According to Space.com, SpaceX reps say the vehicle's first operational missions could come as early as 2021. Guess we'll need to wait and see next year. Life on Mars may be the end goal, but we're still a long ways off. There's a bunch of things we need to figure out first. The UAE is planning to build a $136 million city here on Earth called Mars Science City, which consists of interconnected dome structures that will span 1.9 million square feet. According to Popular Science, the city will be used by engineers to prototype future Mars building materials and construction techniques. It will also house labs that can simulate various parts of Mars' environment. Researchers will practice several methods of farming on light resources, as Mars lacks water and nutritious soil. Waste and water recycling methods will also be tested. With Mars radiation being stronger than on Earth, the domes will be used to test material that can block solar radiation. The domed city will also be able to filter in more or less sunlight, possibly to better mirror Mars time. The UAE plans to have a team of people live in the city for a year to develop strategies for surviving long-term on the red planet. Besides laboratories, the proposed city will also contain a museum dedicated to space achievements. As far as traveling to Mars, astronauts might hibernate their way there. Getting to Mars from Earth takes a long time, as long as 200 days. A group of scientists funded by NASA think astronauts could pass most of that time by hibernating in a sleep chamber, much like what you see here. Each chamber is outfitted with tubes that lower the body's temperature as well as provide nutrition. An intranasal cooling system would lower the astronaut's temperature by 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, which significantly reduces metabolism. The astronaut is fed via catheters attached to the thyroid chest, while another tube carries waste away. This result is what's called a torpor-induced state, causing therapeutic hypothermia. One concern is muscle atrophy due to lack of use. Scientists think they can address this through neuromuscular electrical stimulation. As the astronauts approach Mars, the wake-up cycle begins. Warming pads slowly raise the body's temperature. It takes roughly 1 hour for every 1 degree rise in body temperature. Fully awake after their long nap, the astronauts are ready to begin their Mars mission. The journey to Mars won't be an easy one. Scientists say one of the dangers of traveling to Mars is exposure to radiation. Without the protection of Earth's atmosphere, humans are vulnerable to the sun's gamma rays and hot neutrons, which can cause cancer. A shield made of lead or water, especially in the form of ice, could be used to absorb the radiation and protect the human body. Spending less time in space could also reduce the effects of radiation. During space travel, humans are also prone to osteoporosis. Astronauts in space have been recorded losing 1 to 2% of bone mass per month. That would mean 10 to 25% of skeletal mass being lost during a year-long round trip to Mars. While exercise aboard spacecrafts may help humans retain muscle and bone mass, astronauts have still been recorded losing a significant amount during travel. Other effects of space travel on the human body include changes in the circulatory system and the immune system. Meanwhile, even after humans do make it to Mars, they will still need to battle significantly lower temperatures and a thin and low-pressure atmosphere. Mars may one day be able to sustain a human outpost with the help from the planet's own environment. 96% of the Martian atmosphere is made up of carbon dioxide. Researchers believe this abundant resource, combined with the cold Martian temperature and non-thermal plasma, can reduce oxygen and carbon monoxide. Local production of these gases on Mars could, in theory, help sustain an outpost or even colony on the red planet with oxygen, and help with deeper exploration of the solar system using carbon monoxide as fuel. That being said, it's all speculation for the moment. And we probably won't be joining Matt Damon that soon. Back in 2016, the first home designed for humans to live on in Mars was unveiled at an exhibition in the UK. The exhibition of the show home ties in with a National Geographic docudrama that imagines colonists from Earth living on the red planet. The house would be constructed with Martian soil. The soil would be microwaved until it forms a brick. The bricks would be used to build the walls of an igloo-shaped dome, which should be around 10 feet thick. Recycled spacecraft parts, including a double air-locked entrance, would be used as the front door. Experts believe the dome would be able to withstand the Martian environment, including extremely low temperatures, micrometeorite impacts, thin atmosphere, and cosmic radiation. An underground area would contain facilities such as dining hall and laboratory. The colony would expand module by module until it forms a city termed Olympus Town. The exhibition at the Royal Observatory Greenwich in London coincided with the launch of the 6-part docudrama Mars, which tells the story of an attempt to colonize Mars in the year 2033. Matt Damon sure could have used one of these concept Mars homes in 2015's The Martian. The concept from the Chinese space agency Tongji University and Stefano Boeri Architects would see a spaceship ferry a colony of massive pods containing 4 cities from Earth toward Mars. Once the pods have touched down on the red planet, Inhabitat reports they would use ecosystemic seeds to take root. This colony of 4 city giant pods, dubbed New Shanghai, would also reportedly contain an infrastructure and Earth-like atmosphere. Sounds like a nice place to live, though it may just be too good to be true. NASA is testing a nuclear fission reactor prototype that could enable long-term stays on the surface of the red planet. The first humans on Mars will need to be able to generate power to transform the planet's water and carbon dioxide into liquid oxygen and fuel. Addressing this concern is the Kilopower project, a nuclear power system that comes with a uranium reactor core, which uses fission to generate electricity. The system can generate 1 kilowatt of electricity, which can power a toaster, to 10 kilowatts, which can light up 100 bulbs. 4 to 5 10-kilowatt units will be needed to power the Habit charging vehicles, generating safe drinking water and oxygen. The months-long testing for the Kilopower prototype began in November at a Department of Energy National Security site in Nevada. Though a flight test is at least 6 to 8 years away, if all goes well, the technology could be ready by the mid-2020s to early 2030s. NASA hopes its astronauts will be able to keep up their veggie intake on future missions to the Moon or Mars, thanks to a greenhouse project it is working on with the University of Arizona. The prototype lunar greenhouse is cylindrical, measuring 18 feet in length and more than 8 feet in diameter. The garden uses a hydroponic system in which water enriched with nutrient salts flows continuously through the roots of the plants. Carbon dioxide exhaled by astronauts can be absorbed by the plants. In return, the plants produce oxygen for the astronauts through photosynthesis. The exchange forms a bioregenerative life support system. NASA's veggie plant growth system was the first fresh food growth experiment in the International Space Station. The space agency hopes to provide a more sustainable approach to long-term exploration on the Moon, Mars, and beyond. In the future, astronauts traveling to Mars will need to recycle and reuse as much as possible, including their feces. Researchers are developing a system that uses microbes and human waste to make food for astronauts on long-haul missions. The system introduces microbes into the waste, which then break it down through anaerobic digestion. The methane released during the process is then used to grow the microbe Methylcoccus capsulatus, which is used in animal feed and is a good source of protein and fat. According to one of the scientists, it's a bit like Marmite or Vegemite and grows a lot faster than potatoes and tomatoes. Then again, it's your own poo, and Vegemite isn't exactly the epitome of deliciousness, but not like there'd be a lot of choices up in Mars. Researchers have developed plants that can produce nanomaterials which then give them extraordinary abilities that could allow them to someday grow on Mars. The study, authored by a team from the University of Melbourne, was presented at an American Chemical Society meeting in April 2019. According to the ACS, metal organic frameworks or MOFs consist of metal ions linked to organic molecules which form highly porous crystals that can store and release chemicals. The applications for MOFs range from energy storage to drug delivery. While plants readily absorb water and molecules dissolved in it, MOFs are too big to go into the vascular system. Researchers added metal salts and organic linkers to water and placed the plants in the solution. Once the MOF precursor molecules are absorbed, they are converted into finished nanomaterials inside the plant's tissue. In experiments, MOF precursor molecules in lotus plant clippings grew into fluorescent crystals that were able to detect concentrations of acetone in the water, fading slightly when it did so. Plant cuttings were also coated with luminescent MOFs and then exposed to UV light for 3 hours. Those with the coating had less wilting and bleaching. According to the researchers, the MOFs are also able to convert harmful UV into light that's useful for photosynthesis. This is useful for growing crops in space, especially on Mars, where ultraviolet radiation is abundant due to the lack of atmosphere. According to the ACS, the team has not noticed any toxicity in the nanomaterials and is now working with plant biologists to study how MOFs affect plant growth. NASA researchers are working on robot bees. According to new NASA plans for Martian exploration, robot Mars bees would use a rover as a mobile base for operations and charging. They can stay airborne for 4 to 6 hours. The space agency says the Mars bee is the size of a bumblebee, with a wingspan similar to a cicada. According to NASA, the low Martian gravity reduces the power requirements for generating lift. It's because of this that researchers have incorporated a flapping wing design with a torsional spring to absorb wasted energy. The Mars bees will also be equipped with sensors and wireless devices. They'll use these to further map and sample the red planet, as well as search for methane gas, a key indicator of life. For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.